Hi there. I just wanted to give a few thoughts on China culture and development. I just finished reading a book called China in 10 Words, and it was written by a Chinese author, but it was translated into English. But one of the words was translated revolution. And so one of the themes that he touched on, that the author touched on, Ni hao. Ni hao. One of the themes that the author touched on was how revolution in China hasn't, it's continued in different forms. In like the 80s in 1989 with Tiananmen Square, revolution was political in nature, but like just a few years after that, or within like a very short time after 1989, revolution changed into a drive for financial, for money, and so that has continued, and like I've heard some people talk about the Chinese economic miracle, but if you're here, it doesn't feel like a miracle. It feels like one of the things that the guy talked about was he gave told a lot of stories about the government bullying people out of their old homes and developing that land. And so so in the background here you can see apartment buildings, and these apartment buildings are new. At least they appear to be so. I'd say maybe a year old, but and they look nice. But the funny thing is, looking into all of these buildings, nobody is living in these buildings. Nobody. Like there's nobody in these buildings. Thousands and thousands of apartment buildings, and nobody is inside of them. And just like down the street, kind of around the corner, there's a market with like little food stalls, and you can kind of maybe see them in the background. But as I was writing here, I passed like a group of old people, and like as I look around, I can see a lot of rubble, just rubble, concrete rubble, just mixed in with the dirt. And like if you look behind me, you can see like a dirt field right about there in the background. And so I just had this like really strong feeling like this whole area has just, like a lot of the stories that the author of China in 10 Words, when he was talking about revolution, the stories he would tell is like the government would go in, and they would send thugs, or they would send enforcers into people's homes in the middle of the night, drag them out or arrest them for some reason, or well, maybe not, but something like that. They drag them out of their homes, and by the time they would drag people out of their homes who would refuse to sell for like much less than what their home would be worth, or what the land would be worth, maybe. So they would go in and they drag these people forcibly out of their homes in the middle of the night, and then they would send in bulldozers while the people were basically like kidnapped or in jail. And then by the time the people got out, their homes were destroyed, and so they would be forced to accept the government's offer of like half value on their home. And so like as I'm looking around here and I see all these empty apartments, like thousands and thousands of empty apartments, it reminds me of those stories. And it just like, as I'm looking around, it's like I wonder how many hundreds or thousands of people were displaced from this area forcibly. I just wonder, like I don't have any I don't have any evidence that it occurred here, but I assume that that the story was at least somewhat similar here. So maybe it's not on anybody's mind, but like revolution in China hasn't stopped, it's just changed forms. And if any of you have looked at my blog, you'll know that I think that Chinese people are very proud and passionate and intense and curious. Ni hao. And just waving to people as they go by. Because like here in Bengbu, foreigners are still very rare. So when people see me, a tall white guy from America, they're like, you know, they're just shocked. And so I say hi a lot, and I try to make a good first impression, I guess, and speak a little bit of their language. And so anyways, I just thought I would give a few of those thoughts. It's probably hard to grasp the grandeur of like how big these apartment buildings are, but they just go on and on and on and on in every direction. And like in this city, like there's a lot of development going on in this city. Like, I mean, just everywhere I look, I see cranes, just like tall, massive cranes. Like maybe in the background, I mean, you can see a crane in the far background, but there are like lots of them, and like lots of buildings going up. So I guess I just hope that in the midst of all this development that people are being respected, but I'm assuming that there are probably hundreds, maybe thousands of stories of forcible exiting, forcible exiling of the people who used to live here. I just wonder. So anyways, those are a few thoughts on China. What do you think? What have your experiences been? What do you know? And let me know in the comments, and have a good one.